Now, I'm often asked how I could possibly justify the claim that China is headed towards the creation of a socialist society.
Can you justify that? Anyone in the chat? Because I've been asked this before. Are they heading for socialism? And he speaks very interestingly about why he thinks China modernized the way that it did, which is they had the communist revolution, eh? And then they kind of just turned around and were just like, you know what, it. Let's go back to opening up to the free market. And like he has an interesting spin based on Karl Marx's understanding of capitalism. If you hear people talk about China, there's all these theories like, you know, China wanted to like get in on capitalism because they just wanted to make profits and the party was corrupt and like all this sort of stuff. But like there's also a Marxist way of looking at why China did what they did. And so like, I'll let you decide. Tell me what you think.
In accord with this tendency, capital drives beyond national barriers and prejudices, as much as beyond nature worship, as well as all traditional, confined, complacent, encrusted satisfactions of present needs and reproductions of old ways of life. It is destructive towards all of this and constantly revolutionizes it. Now, this is all presented in what seems to be with a positive, fairly positive connotations.
So like he's just spent a bit of time speaking about like how Marx has been analyzing capitalism in the sense that like it's fairly productive as a system. It breaks down barriers, it revolutionizes means of production, like freeing up labor, and it has a civilizing effect on cultures and on the human race. And so like he spends a bit of time, Harvey, discussing this idea that like, you know, everyone just sees like Karl Marx as like the guy who wrote the Communist Manifesto and wants to bathe in the blood of the capitalist class or something like that. But like he's always acknowledging, Karl Marx that is, that like, you know, capitalism is this wonderful force of humanity that has like unleashed incredible productive capacity.
And again, this is something which is, I think, distinctive about Marx. Well, he'll say all kinds of nasty things about the capitalists and all the rest of it, and the bourgeois. I think there's no question whatsoever that he admires very much what they've done. And this, for him, is very much about laying the basis for an alternative kind of civilization, which is made possible by the kinds of innovations and the new need creations and the science and the willingness to explore the world in all directions and so on. Now, I'm often asked how I could possibly, justify, in a sense, the claim that China is headed towards the creation of a socialist society. Whether it is or not, I don't.
Can you justify that? Anyone in the chat? Because I've been asked this before, and like people will pose this: is China socialist? Are they communist? Are they heading for socialism? Because if you listen to someone like Xi Jinping, socialism with Chinese characteristics and Chinese socialism, or Xi Jinping's version of socialism, they have objectives about how they're going to achieve socialism. And like you can kind of put that down to kind of like, maybe it's just a bit of propaganda. So like all the people continue on their journey with, the Communist Party, with the one party state kind of system, and they're all rowing in the same direction and they're going to achieve communism. So let's just keep going kind of thing. And that's why I was so admirable of what Chiang Kai-shek and his son did in Taiwan, because like it's so easy to be like, yeah, we want to bring in democracy kind of thing, and then like when it comes to actually giving up your power, like you don't actually give it up. But like they were very honorable, and like this is a very Chinese characteristics. There's a lot of honor in like the political game, whereas like if you look at Western politics by comparison, like there's no honor left in Western politics. I would say that's very antiquated to have any form of honor in a Western political scene. And so if you carry this Chinese sentiment of honor through what Chiang Kai-shek and his son showed us, like, are the Chinese actually working to develop their society with the potential to actually achieve socialism? So maybe it's not just propaganda and like lip service to the people to get them keep rowing in the same direction. Let's find out.
I don't know whether it will get there or not, I don't know, but I think the claim has to be taken seriously, in part because if you read this, if Deng Xiaoping read this in 1978 and sat down with colleagues and said, look, we're not going to be able to create socialism unless we get all of this. How are we going to get all of this? Well, capital got all of this, so let's unleash the forces that capital unleashed in this civilizing mission, and let's get ourselves in a position where we command all this stuff, and then we can use it to build a socialist society. Now, whether they'll ever do that, I don't know. But you can see that actually when the claim is made, when Xi Jinping says, look, what we're doing rests very firmly on the basis that Marx created, and Lenin elaborated, and Mao, and Deng Xiaoping, and then me. You know, there's a sort of justification here, right? You know, one of the sayings that Marx uses in Capital, which I'm very fond of quoting.
Me too. I love this quote.
Is that the realm of freedom begins when the realm of necessity is left behind. When you've got the productive capacity to turn the realm of necessity into a kind of sidebar, then you're free to do what you like. But in order to do that, you have to take care of the realm of necessity. And I gather recently somebody told me that actually at the time of Deng Xiaoping, that phrase about the world of freedom begins after the realm of necessity is left behind was actually quoted in the documents, and they recognized that they needed to leave the realm of necessity behind, and the only way they could do that was to raise the productivity of labor, and the only way they could do that was to unleash the forces, which typically and classically had done that, as the bourgeoisie had done.
Okay, so here it is, all right? This is an acknowledgement, and this is very traditional Marxist kind of stuff. Like before, like I know he attributes it to like Lenin developed it and stuff like that, but like Lenin, Mao and all that sort of stuff. Like these people, as I am putting it to you, are national liberationists, okay? They cared about their national struggle. Marx was looking at capitalism or capital as a totality. And so like, you know, if you really want to develop the productive capacity of your labor force and your society, you need to go through a capitalist epoch, because capital is this driving force. And this is what like conservatives and right-wing people and economists, bourgeois economists go on about all the time. Nothing can work like the free market and blah, 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 blah. It's not the free market, it's the force of capital. Capital will go in and find the path of least resistance. It will invest in certain things, and it will develop the means of production because it wants to squeeze the shit out of labor. It wants to squeeze as much value as it can out of the labor force, and so it will develop its technology, it will increase automation, and it will make like basically one worker minding a machine able to do the work of what it took like 1,000 people to do like 50 years ago. And like that's what capital does. Capital develops the productive forces so well that like you can harness that potential if you're smart enough. And so like at some point, he's hypothesizing here, did Deng Xiaoping sit down and with like all of his Chinese communist buddies and just be like, you know what, if we open up to world capital and let capital come here and control it, because that's what they did. They allowed the foreign money to flow in, but like China have always kept a very tight leash on foreign capital investment, and they've been like, yep, you come in, develop our industry, develop our workforce, develop everything in our society, make us wealthy. And they kept it on a tight rope, and they made sure that foreign investment was done in a certain way that protects Chinese interests. And they've used the force of capital. They've like just like opening a tap, they've used the force of capital to come in and like develop them into superpower number 2 in the world, economic powerhouse rivaling the great American citadel of world capitalism. And like, you know, they're threatening the world order at the moment, and it's all because they kind of opened the tap. Now the $1 trillion question is, will they actually use the productive capabilities that they've unleashed to bring into some socialist society? That's, you know, only time will tell. But like, if you can weaponize capital like that, like as someone who studies Marx and understands how kind of capitalism works, and they've done that, they've used the force of capital to completely not like only just industrialize from a basic sense, but completely modernize and change world capitalism to be what it is today in the 21st century. They became the global manufacturing house of the world for a long period of time because they understood the power of capital. Like, that's an incredible advancement. That's an incredible advancement in understanding and knowledge. Like, let capital in and just control it. That's state capitalism right there. Very often confused state capitalism is like, oh, you know, when the government does stuff, like, kind of thing. No, it's not that. It's not just like governments getting involved with a free market or a capitalist society. It's a very particular form of capitalism where like capital is put to use by the state. And you don't demolish the wage to capital relation at all. So like, if this stuff is true, what we're talking about here, just putting it out there, then like Marx's theory on revolution holds true. Because Marx's theory on revolution was that the revolution, the socialist revolution, was going to happen in the most advanced capitalist countries. It wasn't going to happen in like a country like Russia. It wasn't going to happen in a country like China because they hadn't had a bourgeois revolution. And so like all of the revolutionaries around the time of like, you know, Lenin and the Bolsheviks, they were all arguing over this big time. They were just like, well, you need to have a bourgeois revolution before you have a socialist revolution. And then Lenin was like, no, f you. We're the Bolsheviks and we're going to do this and we're going to have our own bourgeois revolution and we're going to bring Russia onto the world stage. And like, you know, they did that to a certain extent, but like they really struggled to like do it without having a bourgeois revolution first, and they really had to become kind of state capitalists in order to do it. They weren't socialists first and then producing a more advanced socialist society because they started with socialism. They really were state capitalist, and then kind of that dissolved. Just like with China, like they were state capitalists who kind of then moved towards opening up to capitalism almost entirely. The more I study all of this stuff, I look at world history, all that sort of stuff, it becomes pretty apparent why it needs to happen in an advanced country. And so like my theory on revolution at the moment, if you're wondering, is like the revolution, like if China's going to do it and they become superpower number one and they're actually moving towards socialism, then fine. But like it wouldn't hurt in a bi-feudal world, as we will call it now, that you have a revolution happening in China and America. America, if you really want to have a revolution somewhere, America is the place to do it. Like, so if we're going to be agitating anywhere as revolutionaries, like we need to somehow agitate in the US, because they are, for the most part, the citadel of world capitalism. And if like you believe the idea that like in late stage capitalism, where we are at the moment, since like, you know, basically the 70s or the 80s at least, it's basically a form of financial late stage capitalism. Is just like a financial capitalist world. Then like, you know, the hub of world finance is New York. And so like if you really want to take down world capitalism, like if you can bring down the American kind of machine and like attack Wall Street, which basically is the network for the, I guess, the multinational corporations that basically have an arm in like everything across the world and have a stake in everything across the global capitalist system, then like you can basically bring upon a new form of society.
Remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.
I am on Patreon. Please follow the link in the description and sign up for free. We are trying to build a revolutionary community over there. So go become a member for free and join the conversation. If you can contribute financially, that would help a lot.